We're talking about the bloody Maelstrom build, a build that happened so naturally, I couldn't even believe it. It all started with the leveling Rend build, and it just never got worse. It shocked me, it's probably gonna shock you, so let's get into it. What up, team? It's MurderInc back with a Diablo 4 video here, presenting to you the bloody Maelstrom build using the aspects Skullbreaker, Berserk Ripping, doing massive damage. How did this come about? I mentioned it was the most natural build progression I've ever seen in my life. That's because if you're familiar with the leveling build, I know a lot of people used it and they enjoyed it. Huge shout out to Mobalytics, by the way, that I've been using. People have been saying how much they love the in-game overlay. And if you're curious about that, you can check out my leveling guide video where I go over this build here. It's the fastest way to level as Barbarian. After I tested everything out, it's using Rend, Steel Grasp, all of that good stuff. It's just really smooth. The thing is, it never got worse. It literally just kept scaling better and better. So it confused me. I changed a few things. I found what I wanted to find, and then I made this bloody Maelstrom Rend build, and the rest is history. So we're going to talk about that today. Of course, as you can see, I have some decent footage of it. I don't have a ton of footage because my recording software hasn't been playing nice with me. It's been freezing. The game's been freezing on me, and I had to swap to another build because I need to make build guides for you guys so you know what to do while heading into season 1. So let's talk about this bloody Maelstrom build and why it's so good. So I will of course have a link to this planner, of course, in the description here. And as we can see from the tag, season 1, insanely easy to play. Like, the playstyle is so simple. Mid game, end game, does boss damage, and it's a speed farm. And I might be thinking, wait, how is Rend a speed farm? It's because you can pull everything in front of you, and this is the key here. I wanted to get footage of this, but I don't have it. Everyone wanted to group with me when they saw me playing this build. All my friends, people who I was just playing with, and they were like, yo, will you come back and do Nightmare Dungeons with me? They wanted to play with me because of this build. Why? Because I would run past the mobs, turn around, Steel Grasp them, and I would use the combo that we're going to talk about here. Use your Shout, Steel Grasp, lunging twice, Rend twice, Steel Grasp one more time, even if you're not pulling anything, then use Iron Maelstrom, and you just full bleed bar everything. Elites, doesn't matter if they're 10 levels above you, you full bleed bar everything. Because of the, well, I guess I should talk about this, how it works. So basically, when you stun a bleeding enemy, you proc the physical damage of Skullbreakers, and if you want to know what Skullbreakers does, we can head to it. Stunning a bleeding enemy deals 22 to 40% of their total bleeding amount to them as physical damage. Now, what does this synergize with? The ring enchant that I have, Berserk Ripping. When you deal direct damage, Skullbreakers inflict 20 to 30% of the base damage dealt as bleeding. So every time you stun, you're proccing Skullbreakers into Ripping, and then it just keeps scaling off of that. You stun them again, it procs Skullbreakers into Ripping again. So you will see the bleeds go higher and higher and higher to the point where I was doing over 120k DPS with Sacred Gear at level 60. Never thought I'd see those numbers. This is a concept that was doing the ridiculous damage, and they nerfed it, but it's still very, very strong. The thing is, it struggled with boss damage. Now, the Malignant Hearts covered that completely. With the Creeping Heart, it's wrathful. It's kind of hard to get, I'm not gonna lie. But once you get the Creeping Death, your boss damage is very, very strong. We're talking about you're gonna start putting bleeds for 30,000 or more damage on bosses at very low levels, and that's a lot of damage. It's a lot of damage. So you'll notice this significantly in group play when the bosses a bleed bar just starts getting decimated. Like I said, I've had people, they were saying, yo, what's up with your bleeds? How are they so ridiculous? And it's because of this build. So what makes this build so strong? The first thing is you don't need a ton of crit rate and crit damage. Yes, we're taking gushing wounds, And you might be thinking, wait, but if we're taking gushing wounds, don't we want crit rate? You do, but it's not that important. You do so much damage, honestly, and this is hard to say, but I'm going to say it. You could not run a keystone, or keystone? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're called keystone talons. You can just not run one. Because like I said, your damage is nuts either way. The only thing you have to remember to make this build go online 100% is that the interaction between Berserk Ripping and Skullbreakers only happens while you're berserking. And you are not running. If you look at the skills really quickly here, we have Lunging Strike, of course, Rend, Challenging Shout, Rallying Cry. What do you notice? We're only using 2 shouts. So since we're using 2 shouts, we don't have Warcry, which is normally the source of Berserk. Instead, we have Steel Grasp here. Steel Grasp applies Berserking for 2 seconds when you use it, which is huge, and that's our only form of Berserking. If you want, you could swap one of the aspects. I'm not sure which one you would swap because they're all pretty important. I would probably say Bold Chieftains, since we're not running Triple Shout, although 6-second cooldown reduction is pretty good for these shouts, so probably not even Bold Chieftains. I would say maybe Anemia, if anything, since you want to hit the berserking window. So if you really wanted to do that, you could swap Anemia out for anytime you crit. For anytime you crit, you extend the duration of berserking. What would you have to do? You'd have to full send into Gushing Wounds, build a reasonable amount of crit rate and crit damage to capitalize on this. But as I said before, it's kind of just a courtesy to take this keystone because pound for pound, even if you're not stacking 4 Gushing Wounds, it's still going to be a significant increase for you. So the keynotes here are going to be in the guide, so you make sure you understand all the interactions for this. Most specifically on Challenging Shout, a lot of players don't know this, so it's important. Stacking the stat Crowd Control Duration, which you'll see I have it on the Helmet CC Duration. I have it on the Amulet as well, CC Duration. So what does CC Duration do? A lot of people think, okay, you're making the stuns last longer so you can proc the Ripping Skullbreakers interaction. True. However, what's also true is, if you know how Challenging Shout works, taunts nearby enemies and gain damage reduction. So while you are taunting them, and it is extending the duration of the taunt's directly linked to the crowd control, which means you can get like a 12, 13, even a 14-second long Challenging Shout, which is quite the increase, which is why we also have Smiting on our two-handed here. While you are healthy, you gain up to 40% increased crowd control duration, and then the boots, again, giving you 20% increased crowd control duration, making Challenging Shout last a long time. Now, if you're going to look at this in-game, like I did, you're going to say it's not working. Why might you think it's not working? When you use Challenging Shout, the display buff above your health bar is only going to show it for 8 seconds total. That's it. But if you go to your stat page, it's going to show you the increased damage reduction lasts for the amount that you're supposed to have, and the tooltip will always read true. Once you're outside of any major city, you will see the tooltip adjusted to the current duration that's according to your CC duration increase from Challenging Shout. So those are the important things there. We have, of course, the purple amethyst gems on the weapon for increased damage over time here. Malignant Hearts, Prudent Hearts, good creeping death, like I said, insane boss killer. You want this because it rounds out the build and just makes it feel so good. Honestly, if it was up to me, I would still be playing this build, but I wanted to test Whirlwind out. I really did. So unfortunately, the life of being a build guide maker, you can't always do what you want to do, so I'm going to test other builds. We're going to get to Whirlwind next. I'm going to head for Hammer of the Ancients after that just to see how good that is. So that's pretty much the rundown of this. The last thing I want to talk about is going to be, a lot of people talk about how clunky Steel Grasp feels because they probably don't know about the animation cancel. So why does Steel Grasp, or why can Steel Grasp feel clunky and not fun to play with? After you use it, there's like a 0.5 second delay before you can start casting abilities. How do we get rid of this? The evade key. That's your movement speed forward, whatever you use it for. If you evade directly after you cast Steel Grasp, you can use any ability you want instantly. This is also good because if you've ever used Steel Grasp, sometimes if you pull a massive pack, which you're going to be doing a lot, especially if you're in groups, some of the mobs go behind you. Can you rend mobs behind you? No, you cannot. So it's ideal to steal grasp and pull everything to you, use your evade, turn around, rend them, and just obliterate them. Or if you're in a party, like I said, they catch up with you finally and they will just obliterate the pack for you while you have the bleeds up. So it's a win-win. But like I said, after playing this build, I became one of the most requested people to join every single nightmare dungeon that any of my friends were trying to run, just ever, because the build is so good in group play. You're instantly applying bleeds, we're insanely tanky. I don't know if I mentioned that, hopefully I did. This build doesn't have to stack any damage. You can see straight DR, we have extra health, all the survivability in the world. And if you don't need crit chance or crit damage, you can prioritize max life, vulnerable damage, and we take vulnerable DR in the Paragon board as well. So there's just so much going for this build, especially in group play. It's really a ton of fun. If you want to play this build, like I said, head to the description. Click on the link to open up Mobalytics. If you don't have it already, make sure you download the app so you can use it in the in-game overlay. The key is Tab Q and I believe Tab W to open up the interface in-game, so you don't have to keep swapping back and forth between the game, the site. It's just all there right in front of you so you can follow the build perfectly as you're progressing through. So that's going to conclude it for the Bloody Maelstrom. Hopefully if you enjoyed my Rend guide, you can then move forward to the Bloody Maelstrom version of this, and it can take you literally all the way to 100. If you choose to stick with Rend, you can do that. It's probably what I would have done, or you can use it to move yourself from 50 to 70 and then pick another build from there. Either option is going to be fine, and I look forward to making more builds for everyone to explore and discover.